Episode 18. How are you feeling, bro?
Pretty good. Keeping the engine going.
That's the best thing you could do, man. Look, today we're gonna move ahead. 2022 World Cup, it's winding down, and we're gonna look into the future, the 2026 World Cup, which would be an expansion of the 2022 World Cup, the 32 team version, to 48. First of all, how are you feeling about the expansion?
I think the history of international football always leans towards pro expansion. It always happens, and it always has turned out for the best. In principle, I'm pretty okay with it. I have a few questions over the format of the tournament itself, but bringing it up to 48 teams, I think, while it might maybe dilute the competitiveness of qualifiers, I think it'll give a lot of teams that otherwise would not make it a chance to play, and I think it'll give us a lot of really exciting games. How about you?
That is true. I think the at first I was a bit skeptical about the expansion to 48 teams, but then when I really thought about it, I was like, okay, more teams would have opportunities, and expansion itself, the word, it's expanding the global game to give opportunities to more teams because this time around we only had one debutant. You see what I'm saying? And we keep seeing the same teams over and over and over again. While for some teams, like for example, Scotland, Austria, Romania, these teams haven't seen the World Cup since 1998. And what if they do get to qualify for the World Cup? That could actually help advance their football even further and inspire generations to come. But if they not seeing their teams at a World Cup, it's like, it's like there's no excitement, there's no hype there. Think about some of the Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia, Vietnam. What if they qualify for a World Cup? You know how massive that would be? So I think the 48 team World Cup does give, that opportunity to more teams, and also FIFA to make more money as well. So it's a win-win. They make more money, more countries get to play at the World Cup, and we get to see countries that we haven't seen before or haven't seen for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And just using the examples that you mentioned, like Scotland, Romania, Austria, uh, their teams I think would add some quality to the tournament too, because you look at them in recent years, they've done quite well in local competitions like in the Euros. So yeah, I mean, I understand the skepticism because when you get used to something for so long, trying a new thing, you get worried about it because you think it might blow up in your face,
Yeah.
or it may impact the competition in a bad way. Plus, the fact that 32 is a nice round number, 8 groups of 4 is even. Um, when we get into the format later, I think that's when you'll hear more, I guess, of an objection from me. But
Yeah.
overall, I'm quite okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think, I heard you mention that you think competition in qualifiers might be watered down a bit. Bro, I think it's gonna be the same or even like more competition because, for example, right, you think about CONMEBOL. CONMEBOL, even though they have more spots, it goes up to 6. We'll get to the allocations. Four of those teams don't want to miss out on direct qualification. So best believe it's gonna get tough. It's gonna you are allowed a bit more slack, let's say in CONMEBOL, but if you go over to Europe, there's not many more places. It's still gonna be very competitive over there, So, and the CONCACAF as well, which brings us to the hosts. Okay, so the hosts would be Canada, Mexico, and the USA, with the USA hosting most and the bulk of the tournament. And this will be the first time ever that we're going to see three nations host the World Cup. We've seen two nations host the World Cup before when South Korea and Japan did it. And I think all the other World Cups are single nation World Cups, right?
That's correct.
So, how do you feel about CONCACAF getting this World Cup? How do you feel about the hosts and the venues, with Mexico only having 10 matches, Canada having 10, and the USA a whopping 60?
Well, first, let me say I'm glad it's coming back to CONCACAF. I'm a big CONCACAF football enthusiast. It'll be the first World Cup in CONCACAF in over 30 years, so it sounds like it's just about time to come back on this side of the world. Three hosts. I am looking forward to it because I think all three of our countries have the infrastructure more or less to meet those demands. I think there won't be an issue as far as like getting stadia up to date and ready in time, like there was like a concern for South Africa and Brazil and to a lesser extent Qatar. As far as like the allocation of number of matches between us, Mexico, and Canada, I'm American, so I don't mind getting most of the games. And I think also if you look at like how big the US is and the infrastructure, it makes sense that we get most of the games. Could you make a case that maybe since there's 80 matches, maybe we should get like 50 and the other two get 15 each, or maybe we get 50% and then they split the other 50%? I could see that because there are some though of people that are upset that Canada and Mexico only getting 10 games, which is like nothing. But
Yeah.
their federation signed on to it. And
Yeah, I think they should have gotten more. I think it should have been 20, 20, and 40, actually.
yeah, I
That
would
would
have
have
been.
been, yeah, that would have been a bit more even in my opinion though. But look,
Yeah,
at least, the US, Canada, and Mexico would all go straight into the World Cup as hosts. So they don't have to worry about qualifiers, and they could now focus on getting the team prepared for the World Cup. Remember, Qatar, they've been preparing for a long time. It didn't work out, but the USA, Canada, and Mexico could learn from Qatar's downfall or their failure and actually look at ways they could improve their preparation and their readiness for that tournament, because they now have 4 years. The World Cup's still going on as we're doing this episode, but they have 4 years to now say, let's get a new man. Well, for Mexico's case, let's get a new manager in now and not sack him because he doesn't win Gold Cup or Nations League, because then that's going to disrupt thing, and it's going to give that incoming manager less and less time to work with for the next World Cup. And you don't want to host the World Cup and then basically get knocked out in the group phase as well. So, let's see how all three teams, do in terms of their preparation for the tournament there. Because look, CONCACAF, they were the first confederation to get knocked out of the 2022 World Cup, and they don't want that to repeat itself with only sending one team into the knockout round. So
I think also for USA, Canada, and Mexico, there's something that we need to keep a weary eye on, which is that the fact that we don't play qualifying matches, we need to find a way to fill that time in, and that includes.
with that being said, I don't know if you saw the news. I didn't really look at the article, but I see that the USA might be taking part in Copa America
I did, yeah.
2024. So we'll see some of that. We'll see. Like, I'm pretty sure Mexico might take part in that too. You might see Mexico and Canada. Did you see anything about Mexico and Canada taking part in that competition?
I saw a few days ago there were some sources saying that all three of us were looking to join that competition.
Yeah, that'll be good.
There was even some that were suggesting maybe the US could host the 2024 Copa America like we did in 2016. That would really, I think, be electric. I don't see why not. The interesting thing with that is there's 10 members in CONMEBOL. So if you invite the three of us, that's 13. So
you'll need more teams. You'll need a few more.
Yeah.
Costa Rica, a few more teams might, have to be involved in that.
Add a Caribbean team, add Jamaica,
Well, what they could actually do is maybe use a tournament that's coming up before the next Gold Cup and use the teams that, according to how they place, that they could get into that Copa America as well, because you don't want to just send a team that got knocked out in a Gold Cup, first round or whatever. You want to reward teams for their brilliance. So yeah, in terms of preparation, we could see that happening. We could see the teams do a lot like what Qatar did by going into other tournaments. And we're gonna have a few Gold Cups and Nations Leagues and things, but you need a competition against other opposition, like the European oppositions, the Asian, the African oppositions, the South American oppositions as well. So let's take a look at one of the most interesting things about the tournament, what the format is going to be. And 48 teams, the first proposed format was 16 groups of three, where the first two teams will go through, and the third place team will get knocked out, and then there'll be a round of 32. Let's take a look at it right here. We should have a section here on the format of the tournament. So this reads: Michel Platini, who was a president of UEFA at the time, had suggested in October of 2013 an expansion of the tournament to 40 teams, an idea that FIFA president Gianni Infantino also suggested in March of 2016. A desire to increase the number of participants in the tournament from the previous 32-team format was announced on October 4, 2016. Four expansion options were considered. First was expand to 40 teams, 8 groups of 5 teams, 88 matches. Expand to 40 teams, 10 groups of 4 teams, 76 matches. Expand to 48 teams, opening 32-team playoff round, 80 matches. So that was the one that they actually chose. 16 groups of 3, 80 matches. So in terms of continuing this, on January 10, 2017, the FIFA Council chose the fourth option and voted unanimously to expand to 48 to a 48-team tournament. The tournament will open with a group stage consisting of 16 groups of 3, with the top 2 teams progressing from each group to a knockout tournament starting with a round of 32 teams. The number of games played overall will increase from 64 to 80, but the number of games played by the finalists remains at 7. The same as the 32 team, as with 32 teams. Each team will play one fewer group match than under the previous format, compensating for the additional knockout round. The tournament will also be completed within 32 days, the same as previous 32-team tournaments. During the 2022 FIFA World Cup, the 3-team format could be abandoned in favor of a 4-team group. And that's where I was getting at. You see, they actually updated this article, Pharaoh. With 48 teams, that would bring the tournament up to 12 groups from 8. The reconsideration stemmed from the last group games and the tensions of 4 teams simultaneously playing for spots in the knockout rounds. So, yeah. And we definitely did discuss that there could be collusion if one team's not playing. So they're reconsidering the format. But I was like, when you came up with the format, I'm pretty sure a lot of these people are very intelligent. When you came up with the proposed format, why they didn't figure that out from the get-go, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on this reconsideration if they were to entertain the idea of it? Do you prefer the initial one they voted on with the 16 groups of 3, or do you lean more towards the 12 of 4 and let the best third place teams go through?
Well, we had previously discussed something, and I have an article that I want to share. And with that article from ESPN, let's actually pull that up and let's take a look at the article, right? So the proposal, I'm not going to go through the whole article, but I just wanted to get to the proposal. And the proposal on Sunday, Wenger told a news conference for the FIFA Technical Study Group that 3 options were under consideration, as well as the 3-team option. Another suggestion is that there would be 12 groups of 4 teams, with the best third place teams advancing with the top 2. A third option is to split the World Cup into 2 separate halves of 24, each featuring 6 groups of 4 teams. The winner of each half would meet in the final. And I kind of like that, though. I kind of like that format because what I was telling you, it's the same as the 32-team format, because you have groups A to groups D, and you have groups E to H. And note the teams, but the only thing is, that's the way it is, right? And those teams are on that same. No, the bracket actually. The bracket splits, right? It splits. It
It's
actually splits. It
it's
actually.
yeah, but I think under a 32 team format, it's still possible for a team from one of the first four groups to play a team from the bottom
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. You're right.
final, which I like that because it increases like the number of combinations of knockout fixtures. Whereas this, for example, let's say the U.S. is in the 24 team on like the right side, and you have, I don't know, Spain on the other. It means it's impossible for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Only could meet in the final. Yeah,
Yeah,
so at the end of the day, the best third place teams options might be the best thing because that's one of the most used format for like the 24 team tournaments that they use the best third place teams. So the fact that that's being used already, I think they will go ahead and use that.
and the issue with that, I feel like there's pros and cons to all three proposals. Like for example, a con, at least in my view, for the 8 groups of 4, I'm sorry, the 12 groups of 4, would be you have concerns about like some mediocre teams making it through a third place sides and who will play who, and figuring out like this section plays from group whatever, first place team plays a third place team,
Yeah, but the thing is, it's already been done. That's the thing. It's already been done and it's been proven. So I think they might actually go with that because that would actually lessen the confusion and it would make teams want to play, a lot better because you don't want to come in third. Or even if you come in third, you want to pip that other third place team, to that best third place team spot where you would have 8 third place teams coming through and 4 missing out.
Yeah.
You see,
I'm not against
playing devil's advocate. And the thing about that too, that's not bad because you already had a 3-team group where 2/3 of the damn group are going through. You see what I mean? So whatever format they come up with, it's left to be seen, but we will discuss that when the time comes indeed. One thing we have to talk about is slot allocation. Qualification, we're going to talk that. Slot allocations. The 3 hosts, the co-hosts, they would actually qualify directly for the tournament, and there will be 2 playoff spots, and which means there will be 43 spots up for grabs in qualifiers. So let's take a look at what each confederation has going into this 2026 World Cup 48 team edition. I have to get used to saying these things, 48 teams, 2026, because we're still in 2022 with 32 teams, So, first of all, we have Africa with 46 plus 1 eligible members here, and they move up from 4.5 spots to basically 8.5. Let's put the 1/3 as a half because that it go into the playoffs. How you feel about AFC moving up? So with 8, it's basically doubled.
Yeah, so it's doubled what it is now. You're asking whether or not I think they should get 8 spots, or
no, how you feel? How you feel overall about them getting the spots, like more, like 8?
I'm all right with it, but I don't know. I feel like 8 should be the limit, or maybe even 7, because yes, Asia had a really successful 2022 World Cup. This was the first time this year they sent 3 teams to the knockout phases ever. But when you go back and you look at like the history of the tournament, they tend to underperform CONCACAF, and they tend to do marginally better, or if not equal, than how some of the CAF teams do. And CONCACAF has 6 1/3. Like you said, we got 2 spots in the playoffs. But
so wait. So what are you trying to say? That CONCACAF should have had more than Asia? That's what you're trying to say?
I'm a CONCACAF propaganda. No. What I'm saying is like, well, look, I mean, this is gonna, no matter your own opinion on like who should get what spots, you're gonna drive some controversy. But Asia getting 8, I don't know if I agree with it, because you're giving double the amount of spots, but you're only increasing the size of the competition by 50%?
Yeah.
from 32 to 48, so additional 16 teams. I think that you get your usual suspects like Japan, South Korea, Australia, Saudi, and then maybe.
All right, let's not predict, bro.
Okay.
Let's not predict. That's for the next episode.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, Asia getting 8 spots. I think
All
it's
right,
a little. I think it's a little bit too high, but that's just my view. What about you?
So yeah, listen, bro. I'm fine. I'm fine with whoever gets what, to be completely honest, because guess what, man? My thing is we get to see fresh teams at the World Cup. For Asia, we might get to see an Uzbekistan, a Vietnam, we could see a Thailand finally. China could probably come back to the World Cup, maybe a North Korea if they participate, you know what I mean? So the UAE, teams like Iraq, Oman, Bahrain might finally qualify,
Well,
Jordan, these teams, you know what I'm saying? So I don't mind. I really don't mind.
I think the main benefiting sides would be a lot of the West Asian countries, because you look at like the teams that you mentioned, like Bahrain, Iraq, Syria.
Yeah, Syria is another team.
I kind of view their clout as a little bit higher than like the likes of Thailand and Malaysia and Vietnam at the current moment. So I get the feeling, this is just my own perception of Asia's quality, that a lot of the West Asian teams would benefit from this expansion more.
With that being said, CAF does move up from 5 spots to 9 and a third, 1/3. So
now that I understand, yeah,
because they do have 54 teams, and if you check UEFA, that was a big argument for a very long time, that CAF and UEFA, they have the same amount of teams, and UEFA, they have 13 direct spots, and CAF only had 5. So you could see how lopsided that was. And you see, and if you want to go and you talk quality, I don't really think it should actually be like that, though. I think if you have how many confederations? 6 confederations. Look, I'm not going to say that OFC should have the same and equal amount as UEFA, but still, man, you know what I'm saying? Like Africa, I think the only how they're going to improve is to allow more teams to play at the top level, and the same for Asia and so on and so forth. But you got to have a cap. Like CONMEBOL, they only got 10 teams. You're not going to allow all 10 into the competition, So I definitely could understand that. So Africa, at least, look, my thing is with Africa, I just hope they get rid of that format, bro. That format is like too unfair.
Oh, and one with the playoffs, it's garbage.
And Egypt missed out twice when they should have qualified because of that format. So hopefully with the expansion, they get rid of that format, man. You think they would, though?
I mean, you would think they have to, because of the expansion. They got to accommodate sending a double number of teams. But going back, I think that this whole, now that we're in the allocation category of this conversation, I think you touch on a very important point, which is that it's that age-old debate of inclusion versus quality and finding the right balance. And I'm with you on that. I think the World Cup expanding is great. You know me, I'm a big international football enthusiast. I think more teams in it is a net positive. It's all about just finding that right like equilibrium, to where you have more teams that are able to grow the game and get participation without at a cost of the quality of the competition itself. So it's tough. It's something that even when I go over this often in my own head, I'm not exactly quite sure where to land on it, because it's not easy. It's not easy, because you want to make sure you do things the right way. So for Africa specifically, getting 9 spots, yeah, it makes perfect sense. They have 54 member associations. African World Cup qualifying is harsh. You have a lot of decent teams missing out, like Ivory Coast, Ghana missed out, Nigeria missed out, Mali, Burkina Faso, Algeria.
And another thing too, right? It messes up the continuity of some teams. Like you go back to 2006 when Angola and Togo actually qualified for the World Cup. We haven't seen them back since, because it's just too hard. Burkina Faso, they've been knocking down the door, beating down the door for years.
Yep.
Zambia, there's some teams that should have been at the World Cup before. Congo, DR, they should have been back at the World Cup before. Again, but of course, because of the limited amount of spots, they just can't, and the format. So look, CONMEBOL, they move up from 4.5 to 6 and the playoff spot, which means that only 3 teams would miss out on an opportunity to basically qualify for the World Cup. 6 directly, 1 into the playoffs, Venezuela, Bolivia, and somebody else. Or we could see Venezuela or Bolivia put themselves in that 6. You never know. I would love to see that, actually.
Oh, yeah, for sure. If you want a team to make it back for the first time in a long time, or if you want a team to qualify for the first time ever, which would be Venezuela's case.
Yeah.
I think CONMEBOL is a victim of its size. Like you said, there's a limit to how much you can give them because they're the smallest confederation in terms of number of members. Yeah, so even if they made the World Cup 64 teams, giving CONMEBOL like 8 or 9 spots would be way too overkill. And it's an unfortunate reality that because if you make it where 80% of teams can qualify, what's the point of having qualifiers?
Yeah.
I think 6 is good. I think 6 plus the playoff spot, because that means that 7th team will have to earn it. So it's already 4.5 now.
The thing too, right? This was probably the whole outlook back in 1994 or so when the World Cup was going to be expanded from 24 to 32 teams. It's probably the same arguments like, no, you're watering it down, don't do it. But look, now we have another expansion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
OFC, they get 1 spot. I'm happy for them. I'm happy. Whether it's going to be New Zealand or New Caledonia, whether it's Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, let them scrap it up for that 1 spot. And they do have a team going into that playoff tournament, which gives them another opportunity for sure. And I'm happy. I'm really, really happy for that. UEFA, on the other hand, only gets 3 extra teams, which I think is very, very fair not to give them 20 teams. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And give the other teams less. So UEFA still, they do have the bulk of the nations there. And you understand the quality is there. You look at every World Cup, the last team standings, always from CONMEBOL or UEFA. There's never been another World Cup winner. It's always CONMEBOL and UEFA. So you could understand why. And a lot of the money as well comes from those nations, So you could understand it's a money thing.
And 16 is a nice round even number, and it would give them exactly 1/3 of the spots, which for one confederation to have, they should be happy with that. I think it's a pretty fair number. I saw other estimates that were like somewhere between 16 to 18. I think 18 would be pushing it, but definitely not 20 or the 20s. That's too much. I think 16. Between 16 to 18 is like where it should be, I think.
Look at that. Look at the notes. The Northern Mariana Islands will be competing in World Cup qualification as it is used in joint qualification for the 2027 Asian Cup. I've never heard of this country in my life.
Wow.
The Northern Mariana Islands. You know about this country?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know you love the geography and the flags and everything, man. So the issue of how to allocate automatic host country qualification, given that there are multiple host countries, has not yet been resolved and will be decided by FIFA Council. But yeah, I think, I ran across an article that they did agree that the 3 teams will actually qualify, because how could you have a team hosting and then they're not at the tournament, right?
Yeah, even more so if those hosts fail to qualify, which would be embarrassing.
Exactly. So it's a no-brainer, though. So basically what we did today was an overview. We're dabbling with the 2026 World Cup because qualifiers. Let's scroll up and let's show everybody that qualifiers. Let's go down. Where's qualifiers? Okay, qualification. We're going to click qualification, and it says March 2023 to March 2026.
Coming soon.
It's coming very, very soon, and you're going to have that here on World Cup Digest with Football Pharaoh and I. So it was a nice little episode, but I did have fun. You know, we touched on many things, and we will talk 2026 a lot going forward. What we have for you, though, it's in episode 19. We're going to do some early predictions for the 48 teams, and go check that out. Make sure you go check out the next episode, okay? So, Football Pharaoh, take it away.
Thanks for having me on, Dom, for episode 18. We presented a lot of information in a short period of time. We made it very, very straight to the point. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Join us for number 19. This series is just getting started. I say that all the time, but it's true. You can find me over at my channel, Football Pharaoh. Also find me on Twitter at Soccer Pharaoh, at soccer_Pharaoh. Till next time, peace out.
Peace. 2026, baby.